stand up. As you've all figured out, this meeting is being recorded, and it will be posted on SAC's own YouTube channel by our combination treasurer, webmaster, and man of all trades, Shags Chagrin. Take a bow, Shags. Thank you. This is a really special night. Genre storytelling is starting its third year. 2 very successful years, and I think our audience just keeps growing. August 2 years ago was the first Personal Stories night, and this is now the third Personal Stories night. We have a super lineup, 8 tellers, and it's going to take all the time we've got today, so let's get started without any more ado. Our first teller tonight is Ashton Cynthia Clark. Her story is called 100 to a Box, Size Large. Now, Ashton had believed that her family's idea of relationships was oceans apart from her own. But when her father's illness prompted her to relocate from Los Angeles back to her hometown of New York City, she learned that their adherence to details and duty were also expressions of love. Ashton.
You muted.
I thought I'd offer a trigger warning for this story because it does discuss caring for a parent in hospice care. Sister Thomas, a registered nurse from Sister Servants of Mary, arrived for one of her once weekly visits. Tuesday, Tuesday, Tuesday. One night a week that I might sleep a straight 6 hours and not trade shifts with my brother to watch over Daddy. Our family wasn't Catholic, but no matter. The nuns' mission was to provide nursing home care to the terminally ill and to serve the families in the home however they could. I have to go to the store, I told Sister Thomas. It was about 10:30 p.m. in New York City, March 2013. We need a box of rubber gloves, the blue ones. That was a little detail my father had insisted on. Those are the best kind, he had said. Don't mind the gloves, the sister waved me off. She was originally from Ghana. To my ear, her accent rang similar to, but a little more melodious than my Jamaican parents. I have enough, go to bed. But it was just one more thing for the night, one more thing. I could handle it, then I could sleep. But as I backed the car out, the driveway seemed to close in from both sides. I crept forward, then reverse, then both again, but each time getting nearer instead of further from the left-hand gate. And on my last frustrated maneuver, the driver's side mirror crunched into the wrought iron gate and ripped completely off. Jerking the car to a stop, I jumped out to examine the not new, but scrupulously maintained, damn, I wish I had one, borrowed Infiniti Q60. The mirror dangled by wires from its housing, and shards of silver gray plastic littered the ground. I had crashed my brother's car. And then the tears came, and I couldn't stop. I was wailing, and I mean snotting, as I stooped to collect the largest pieces of glass from the concrete. How had I gotten to this state? I mean, I'd kept my calm up until now. I had to. Everyone depended on me. And it was only a quick trip to Rite Aid for the gloves, the ones that came 100 to a box, size large, the blue ones. And I had come in and out of that driveway dozens of times. There was a gasp from the second floor window. Our neighbor, Rosanna, who had been renting that apartment for 40 plus years, even before my parents purchased the two-family building. Her granddaughter, Dilsa, now shared the apartment with her. And it was Dilsa who was just returning from her nursing shift at the local hospital. She rushed over. What's wrong? I crashed my brother's car. I was trembling nonstop, but Dilsa wrapped her arms around me. She, a child in her 20s, me on the downslope of my 50s. But at that moment, Dilsa seemed like the mother that I had lost nearly 20 years before. Go upstairs. I can't. I have to go to the store. I need a box of rubber gloves. Please, go upstairs. I'll get the gloves. I know how hard this is. When I moved to New York from Los Angeles 3 months before, all of us were expecting a full recovery. But in that time, my father's cancer had dug in and taken over. Rogue cells replicating crazily in a sick imitation of his liver, then lungs. Daddy's decision to end his treatment seemed rooted in logic and practicality. I hated that. I mean, he had even chuckled a little while back on his 86th birthday. Me living on borrowed time now. I hated that I was forced to educate myself on what to expect during the doctor's 6-week time frame, to learn the definitions of palliative care and hospice, that this wasn't just taking a break from treatment. I can remember there was this day that we returned from the final visit to the oncologist. In the few seconds that my brother turned away to lock the front gate, and I had continued ahead to unlock the house door, all of us, too accustomed to Daddy's strong self-sufficiency, none of us imagined that he could no longer keep his balance walking down the sloping driveway, and that gravity would pull him into an awkward trot, and he'd pitch first face onto the pavement. The cut on his lower lip was small, but the skin immediately, it puffed up and it bled profusely nonetheless. A scream almost escaped my lips, but I choked it back. That wasn't how the family dealt with things. But how could Daddy smile? One more time, as he started a slow, steady climb up the stairs to the 3rd floor. A few weeks later, I rolled around in the kitchen, wanting to whip up a delicious breakfast. What would you like, Daddy? How about some coddled egg? Coddled, I thought. Where are we, Downton Abbey? I'm afraid I don't know how to make that. I'll teach you. I often felt critical of my family, so precise, so mechanical, fixed on the details. The more laid back West Coast lifestyle I now claimed felt an ocean apart from the East Coast family I'd left. But there I was, doing the best I could with those eggs. I messed up the timing though, and my coddled crossed the line over to poached. But we had a good laugh, and Daddy seemed so happy. He only ate a few bites, but I wasn't offended. That was the last time he was able to leave his bedroom. So that mid-March night, a trip to the store was just one more thing too much. I had tried to do what was expected, to attend to the details as we always did. But how was any of that important now? I mean, Daddy was no longer talking. He had stopped eating a day before. He was seeing and would watch me, but the hearing aid had become an irritant, so he'd stopped listening. And his skin, super sensitive, pulled away from touch. His latest nights included nightmare screams like, "Why? Why?" And another 2 a.m. cry, "Forgive me." but I did the best I could those last days, continuing to pray, keeping watch, but the saddest times, soothing him with the care that you might give an infant, and promising to him that he was forgiven and loved, and that he could still depend on me to have enough of those rubber gloves, the blue ones. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Ashton. That was beautiful. I wish I could make comments about everybody's story after they speak, but we're going to kind of keep it moving right along, and I hope to have a little time. I'm getting choked up here. That was a beautiful story. A little time to introduce everybody at the end and say how I feel about your stories, which is great. Our next speaker tonight is Mindy Donner. Mindy's telling a story entitled Fools and Accomplices. It's a sampler of the foolish adventures of two young women travelers across cultures, with a wise fool of Chelm story embedded within. I'm dying to hear this. Take it away, Mindy.
Thank you, Tina. This particular brand of foolishness, about which I'm going to tell, has a portion of the Cinderella syndrome running through it. That portion, that is when Cinderella stayed too late at the ball. And my best friend forever, Joan, and I perpetuated this throughout the UK, across Europe, and across North Africa. It started in York, and there were some unsavory details with a couple of married men, and I was very put out. And somehow we got back to our hotel, and there were no consequences. We just tiptoed up those stairs. But by the time we got to Inverness, Scotland, there were consequences. There was a party, and I was pulling Joan reluctantly away, and we arrived at our youth hostel a bit late. The proprietor leaned out at us. Now, girls, you are post-curfew. You're 15 minutes late, and I'll see you tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. sharp. And by the way, it's going to frost tonight. I was already frosted. And we headed out to the park-like setting where there were two park benches and a friendly light. We curled up each on a bench in some sort of version of the fetal position. And the silence of the night was punctuated by, "Are you asleep?" Or, "What time is it?" And it did frost. I noticed my shoes looked like that. We scrambled to the door at 7 a.m. We were let in. And I asked the proprietor if, please, could he crank the heat up just a degree or two? "Oh, well, I can't do that because the prescriptive time to turn on the heat is when the season starts in 48 hours. Oh, well, I went to bed with all of my clothes and my turned up shoes. And then in Ireland, we got rained on and my shoes went from this to this. Now, this reminds me of a little story about a wise fool from Chelm in Poland. And here's how it goes. Selig was a sage, and he had heard from a traveling salesman about the glories and the elegance of the city of Warsaw. And he wanted to go, so he went to his wife, Mindel. "Mindel, before I die, I have to go to Warsaw." "What? You're dying?" "I didn't say that. I have to go to Warsaw." "But you can't. You're a sage. Therefore, we're penniless." "I will walk." "But you wear out your shoes." "I'll put them on my hands." "Oh, okay. And so she made him a lunch. What else was there to do? And she put in a crust of bread in a kerchief and some cheese, wrapped it up, and made a little pole which to carry this. And he put his hands in his shoes, and Selig bade his wife goodbye and went off to have an adventure in Warsaw. Well, about noon, his stomach was calling to him, and he was at the crossroads. This way, Chelm, and this way, Warsaw. So he undid his lunch. Ah, the crust of bread had nourishment, and the piece of cheese, delicate. And then he thought, what if I go to sleep and I wake up and it's dark and I don't know which way to go? So he took his shoes, which he had taken off to eat, of course, and he put them on the side that said Warsaw. Well, a thief crept in, saw those shoes, and picked them up. These are good for nothing. They have holes. They're good for sieves or a drain. And he flung the shoes. And you know, and I know that the shoes landed on the Chelm side, but our hero did not know. Oh, it's dark. I must find my shoes. He found his shoes. He put them on his hands and he continued on his journey. So he thought, oh, this great city of Warsaw looks so much like my village. And this neighborhood looks exactly like mine. Oh, and the house across the street looks just like my house. And that woman going inside with the children looks exactly like my Mindel and my children. But that can't be because I am in Warsaw. And he was standing out in the street. Well, Mindel saw him. Come on in, Selig. What are you standing out there with your mouth gaping wide open? Come on in for dinner already. And so he did. And he noticed that every nuance of movement that this woman made was just like his Mindel. And she burned the roast in exactly the same spot. And the children, oh, they wouldn't let him go. And it looked like his little Shemala and his little Moishela. But no, these are not my children. This is not my wife. Still, he stayed there because he wanted to see when this other Selig came home, if he were the same. And so if he has not yet died, he's still staying there today, waiting for that other Selig to come home. Now, this is a length to which a sage of Chelm will go in order to know truth. Well, my shoes pointed to Morocco. And there we went across France and Spain to Marrakesh. And I will not regale you with our misadventures, but I want to tell you, in order to balance the story, about the beauties of the Moroccan people, which evidence themselves as when our bus would stop in a rather rural area, one blind person, or maybe two, would come on the bus and ask for alms. And every single passenger gave alms. Now, we were about to leave Marrakesh, and Joan was tidying up the room and packing our suitcases, and I went and I paid the proprietor. I didn't ask for a receipt. Now, the proprietor was a tall man and very dour, and he had a wooden peg leg like a pirate. Now, maybe this is the reason he was so dour, I don't know. And anyway, we got our suitcases and we headed out to the / train depot bus stop. And midway, there was a tumult and a ruckus. And there, as though the magic lamp had released a genie, was that tall proprietor. And he was playing bad cop, and his accomplice was playing good cop. And he was yelling at me, "You didn't pay." I did pay. And then the little accomplice would switch up. "You didn't pay." "I did pay. I paid him and he knows it." Well, then people, mostly women, were leaning out of windows. "You did not pay." Around doors. "You didn't pay." And around corners. "You owe." The little man had grabbed Joan's arm. I grabbed the other arm, and Joan was being stretched like saltwater taffy. And oh, I had a flashback. I was standing in the elevator. I was 7 years old, or maybe 6, and Marshall Fields at Christmas time waiting for Uncle Mistletoe. And Sandy Gordon was kicking me in the elevator in the shins. And her mother, Janet, and my mother both implored me, "Kick her back." I closed my eyes and I kicked Sandy in the shins. Woo, back to Marrakesh. Well, I was waiting for Joan to break loose so we could run. She couldn't do it. She just couldn't do it. And so I looked the little man in the eye and I said, "You little creep." And I kicked him as hard as I could in the shins. He let go of Joan's arm and I grabbed her harder, and we ran and we ran and we ran all the way to the train depot. And there we boarded the first train to Algeria. I would like to tell you that this ended our foolishness. But like the wise fools and sages of Chelm, I cannot tell a lie. Thank you.
Oh, how delightful, Mindy. Such fun. You tell a story with so much animation, and it's wonderful to know how to pronounce Helm properly. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Ah, yes, Helm.
Great. Let's move on to our third speaker tonight, Marian Ferrante. Marian's story is called Misdelivered. Just one word, misdelivered. And she asks us to imagine. Your order of social studies school books has just arrived, and you are relieved because it's been delivered just in time for to start the school year. But wait. Oh, this isn't it at all. Take it away, Marian.
Oh my gosh! That box. Oh. The commotion ensued, and Jim, the special ed director, and I, the speech therapist, we were in the teacher's break room and we rushed up to the front school office hearing all that commotion. And there was Diane, our clerk. She had that box cutter still in her hand and she's pointing. Oh my gosh, Diane. Jim looks, he blushed. Marian shut the door. I can't believe this really happened. 1987 in the Byron Union School District, a little rural district out in East Contra Costa County, K-8 we were. Well, we were expecting our social studies books. Of course, our social studies books, but this wasn't them. Oh no, these weren't hardcover. We were expecting maps, discussions of Mesopotamia, bar charts of populations, and pictures, well, yeah, pictures of indigenous people. These were in Japanese. We don't have a Japanese language class here. Oh my gosh, but they were in a format, a different format. Oh yeah, one we knew. Oh yeah. This format was magazine cover. Oh, 150 pages, slick pages inside. Advertisements, cigarettes, resorts, fashion, and cars, articles, and interviews. Yeah, there were interviews of famous people and pictures. Oh, yeah, pictures of women, single pieces of chiffon. And in these, oh, body parts peeking out from behind hand embroidered kimonos. These, oh, those pictures and the centerfold. Wow. Oh. Diane says, what am I going to do? Well, I don't know, but you heard the bell ring and Mary and I have to get back to our special ed students. And we were out the door. But you know that at the end of the school day, when that last bell rang, Jim and I were up in the front office again. What happened, Diane? Well, Superintendent Wolford, she heard the commotion and she was in my office. She told me, get on the phone right now because we need our social studies books. I did, and I called them up. They didn't know how this possibly could happen, they said. And yes, they would send us our books. And then I heard commotion on their end of the line. An event like this could not be contained no matter how much we tried, but it was what happened. The staff would talk about it. Of course we'd talk about it. And then of course kids found out about it. We would talk though about, oh, what happened in Texas. When Diane called, oh, we tried to figure out what happened. Well, I mean, somebody was smuggling magazines through their shipping department. Oh my gosh. And we think because of our report, somebody got fired that day. We would talk about it. And well, this is also a tiny district. And a lot of the teachers are parents of the students. You know, the kids found out. I think there was 6th grade boys saying, we want those social studies books. The company did not ask for us to return the magazines. So Diane took the box and put it in her closet. And over time, staff members whisked some copies away. That was September. Come Christmas time, well, our staff always has a Christmas party. And we would have a white elephant exchange. You know, you look around your house, finding something you don't need or don't want. You wrap it up really nicely and give a mystery gift. Japanese playboys made the rounds. These Japanese playboys were in the white elephant exchange, and we had rounds of stealing besides. That went on for several years. And over time, though, it faded out. Time passed, years passed. I went off to work at a different district, but Jim put out his career in the Byron School District. And when I heard he was retiring, I thought, oh, I'm going to give him a special gift. But I had to find one. I called around and I heard Kathy, the art teacher, might have one. Kathy, do you have any of those Japanese playboys? Oh, I think we might in the garage, not a whole magazine, maybe just a cover. Good enough. And with that, at Jim's retirement party, the staff, the old staff, oh, we were close to each other. We gathered around Jim. He opened that special gift. He blushed again and we laughed. We had one last laugh at our Japanese social studies books. And ever since then, the Byron School District, they make sure, well, they order their books early, extra early, just in case they should ever have another misdelivery.
Oh, I laughed out loud. What a neatly constructed story, Marion. That was utterly delightful. Japanese playboys. You did, I presume, get your social studies textbooks, the correct ones, in time for at least.
Not time.
Wonderful. Okay, let's go on to our fourth speaker today, my fellow SAC board member, Rupa Mohan. The title of Rupa's story is Even a Donkey Can. There's an exclamation point after that too, so she really means it. She says the story is about her trials and tribulations in the kitchen through the years. Please welcome Rupa Mohan.
Namaste, greetings. When I was growing up in South India, I would often go to weddings and encounter these elderly relatives, like grand aunts, who would look me up and down and say, "You are going to be married next. Do you know how to cook? After all, a way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Don't you know that?" I would sheepishly smile and walk away because we were not supposed to be rude. But I had no interest in cooking, nor did I want to get married. My grandma was very progressive. She told me, "Don't worry, Rupa. You can easily learn when the time comes. Even a donkey can learn to cook. It's not that difficult." I believed her and didn't even enter her large kitchen at the back of the house. Well, as luck would have it, I was soon engaged to be married. And it was a whirlwind. I was supposed to come to the US and I didn't know how to cook. How was I going to manage? My grandma called me. She sat me down and she dictated all her favorite recipes that I meticulously wrote down. But I didn't have time to try any of these out because soon I was on a Pan Am flight with 2 heavy suitcases filled with all things Indian, including her favorite pots and pans, her spices, her lentils, and even her sparkling stainless steel pressure cooker. And of course, her recipe book. When I landed in San Francisco over 40 years ago, my husband greeted me and he took me home and gave me a lovely South Indian meal that he had cooked with roasted potatoes and a dal or a soup that we call masiyal in Tamil. It tasted so good. I was so impressed. And I thought, well, maybe I don't have to ever learn to cook. But that was not true. The next day he handed me the ladle and said, "My dear, you have all the time in the world to experiment." Well, I look forward to your food. I am tired of cooking and I only know these 2 items. So there I was, looking at my grandma's recipes, trying to figure things out. And I must say, I had many mishaps. What was I to do when those mustard seeds I dropped in the hot oil would start popping and scalding me? This was essential in South Indian cooking to release flavors. But I thought it was how to torture a young bride 101. What was I to do when the pressure cooker exploded and painted the ceiling with green spinach? What was I to do when I, along with a cousin, tried to bake a pineapple upside down cake and we set the oven on fire? My husband luckily came to the rescue with his new beautiful fire extinguisher. Well, it was not that easy. But over the next few months, I got a little confident and cocky enough to host my first dinner party. I invited a few couples and insisted that I would make everything from scratch, just like my grandma. And I was going to try a new cuisine, North Indian cuisine, with samosas and pulao and all that, just to impress the guests. After all, I had the entire day. So I started out early in the morning, prepping, chopping vegetables, prepping, chopping, and then before I realized it, it was 5 o'clock and I hadn't made the samosas. My husband had offered to buy them from the Indian store, but of course I wouldn't hear of it. And I was just starting to roll out the samosa pastry when there was a knock on the door. My first guest had arrived. Well, what was wrong? We Indians are famous for coming at least an hour late. It's known as Indian Standard Time, and here were my guests an hour early. I was miserable, and under their stern eye, the samosas became a mess, taking on different shapes. But I persisted. I somehow finished them and deep fried them, and I served them along with my other food. Well, they left saying, for a new bride, that was a pretty good meal. Was that supposed to be a compliment? I'm still trying to figure that out. Well, as time went by, I had children and my daughters started to go to school. And I didn't want to send them a peanut butter sandwich or have them buy food in the cafeteria. I wanted to make it from scratch, like my grandma and my mother did for me. So here I was, waking up early in the morning, making these elaborate lunches with different kinds of rice, and of course the rotis or the flatbreads stuffed with potatoes. And I put them in these special hot cases that I had brought from India. And I would be happy when they came back empty. But one day when I went to school at lunchtime, and I noticed that all the kids were in the playground having fun, while my daughters were sitting there under a tree trying to get through that lunch. Well, I had to retreat and let them enjoy their childhood. Over the years, well, even a donkey learns, right? So I did become better at cooking. Except I had a mishap or two. Even recently, well, those mustard seeds even now get me now, quite a few times and scar my palm or my hand if I don't close the lid in time. And just last month, I had this crazy situation. I had left a big vessel of batter in the oven. See, we make this batter from scratch with rice and lentils, and it's supposed to ferment a little bit, and we end up making dosas or a kind of a crepe with them, and I thought I had just mastered it. But that day the batter seems to have had another plan because when I opened the oven, there was this big volcanic eruption. That batter was like white lava all over the oven. Oh my god, it took me days to clean it out, and I can swear it still smells a little bit of that dosa batter. Well, enough, I thought. I have been trying too hard to be like my grandma and to make her proud. But I need to change with the times, don't I? Like, I used to cook these huge meals before we went on a road trip. And I would get myself so exhausted and tired that I would fall asleep in the car, missing out on the beautiful views. And it got to a point where my children and my mother-in-law and mother, who often accompanied us, even they said, maybe we can try Taco Bell. That seemed to be a good idea. Well, over the years, I have learned many shortcuts and tricks. Now I can proudly say that I am a good chef, a home chef. Maybe not as good as my grandma, but I think I'm okay. After all, an old donkey can learn new tricks. Don't you think so? Thank you.
Oh, delightful. Of all brands of humor, I think self-deprecatory humor is my very, very favorite, and you just do it so well, Rupa. Thank you so much for that lovely story. Okay, we're at the halfway point, 4 speakers to go, and it's time to hear from our one man tonight, Andrew Laufman. His story, he must have gotten together with Rupa. His story is entitled The Dinner Table. And his introduction is, life really does happen at the dinner table. Over to you, Andrew.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for letting me tell you a story tonight. There are 8 of us around the dinner table, my 5 siblings and me and my 2 parents. I'm the youngest, the baby, still the baby, even at 60-something years old, I'm still the baby. All my siblings are still alive and they still call me the baby of the family. We loved having dinner together and really loved the routine. 3 of the oldest kids sat on one side of the table and the 3 youngest kids sat on the opposite side. And I, being the youngest, I was always the smallest and I was always looking up at everybody. But we all have great stories about the dinner table and I just love the whole routine. And one thing that we remember, all of us remember, is our dinner prayer that we said every night for years and years and years. Bless us, O Lord, for these thy gifts, which we are about to receive from thy bounty through Christ our Lord. Amen. We said that prayer, then boom, the conversation started and all the hands and everything started reaching around and we'd take bowls and pass them from the right to the left. And it was just a lot of commotion going on until everybody's plate was full. I loved it when I got the mashed potatoes because my mom always made a lot of mashed potatoes and I could scoop them up and plop them on my plate. It was always a delight. Once all the plates were full, my parents started talking. The kids, most of us, we would listen most of the time and eat. Once in a while, we'd chime in. But once in a while, too, something unusual would happen. For instance, my sister, the sister that was youngest to me, Marcia, she sat next to my dad and me, and she was missing her 2 front teeth at this time. And she took a cherry tomato, and you know how she couldn't really chew it, so she stuck it on the side of her face like this. With her mouth open, she took a bite, and a huge stream of juice and seeds arced about 2 feet into the air, all over my dad's face and glasses. Oh my God. We just roared with laughter. It was so funny. Thankfully, my dad laughed too. Lots of laughter at the table. we also learned a lot at the tables. You see, my mom started pharmacy school when I was 5 years old. And the oldest was 13 years old. That would be Susan, my oldest sister. But because she was in pharmacy school, she had to dissect the human cadaver. And you got it. We would talk about, Mom would talk about Irma. Irma was her cadaver. And she was dissecting for, I don't know, 1 or 2 semesters. And every night at the dinner table, we would learn about Irma, about her intestines, about her eyes, about her ears, and all. None of us to this day are squeamish at all. We just really got used to talking about Irma. Well, there was drama as well, of course. My 13-year-old sister was one time arguing with everybody at the table. I have no idea what the argument was about. But she got very upset, and she got up and she stomped over to the hallway through which her room was. And she stopped at the hallway and she turned and she said, "You're all a pack of logical liars." Well, when she said that, oh my gosh, my parents just roared with laughter again. And I had no idea what it meant. And so I asked Mom, what's so funny? And Mom said, well, she's trying to say pathological liars, son. I thought, oh, what's that mean? Well, that's someone who lies all the time. And okay. So I learned something there. My poor sister didn't think it was very funny though. But we had drama. And then there were times when we didn't say much at all. Like the time my brother and I got in a car accident. My parents and I were in the backyard and we were just lounging around and around the pool. And my brother came into the backyard asking me to go with him on an errand. Well, I could tell that he'd been drinking, but my parents couldn't tell. So when he asked them if I could go, they said yes. And I didn't want to hurt his feelings, so I went with him. Well, the errand part was a ruse. He had no errand to run. He just wanted to go for a joyride. And so we ended up on this place called Lucas Valley Road out of San Rafael. It's very, very windy road. And he was in a Mustang, it was a very fast Mustang. And he started racing around the curves. And then suddenly there was a car in front of us. So he decided to race around and pass him. And when he came around this way, the back end slid out off the road. And we went tumbling down this cliff 2.5 times. It was a very steep ravine, and boom, a big old oak tree stopped us. And we ended up on our side, all the windows smashed out, the roof caved in. I ended up in the driver's seat when we went, and my brother ended up in the back seat, completely unconscious. So when we started to roll, that was the days we didn't really have to wear seatbelts much. I just tucked up into a ball like this. And I was rolling around and bouncing around inside the cab. I could see the seat, and I remember the dashboard, and I remember seeing the stick shift and glass flying everywhere. And then all of a sudden, bam, we stopped. Silence. He's unconscious, won't wake up. Somehow I got on my feet. As I did, somebody up on the road's going, get away, it's gonna blow, it's gonna blow. Well, there was no way I was gonna leave my brother there. So I'm all of 125 pounds, right, at this time. He's probably 175. I'm on my feet. I reach in the back seat and I pick him up under his shirt sleeves here. And I pull him unconscious from the back seat through the windshield, and I carry him up on the hill. I'm telling you, he felt as light as a feather. To this day, there's no way I could do that. And he felt absolutely weightless when I pulled him up. And I guess it was adrenaline or something. Anyway, we got home. Everybody was okay. We went to the hospital and he was fine. I didn't have a scratch. He hurt his knee, but we got home in time for dinner. Nobody was saying a word. The parents were just so thankful that we were both alive. My brother was embarrassed for almost killing us, and I felt pretty foolish for even getting in the car in the first place. So there we had to deal with shame at the dinner table. So we had laughter, we had learning, we had dealing with drama at the dinner table, and dealing with other emotions like shame. And of course, there's announcements, special announcements you always get at the dinner table. Mom, Dad, I want to get married, or Mom, Dad, I'm gay. Who knows? Who knows what other announcement? Lots of life happens at the dinner table. And I carry the tradition on with my kids. And one of my favorite memories with them you know, that awkward stage with when kids are growing up, you say, how was your day? They say, fine. How was school? Fine. That just didn't cut it for me. So I asked them, tell me about 2 conversations you had today. I asked them both that. At first, they were pretty irritated with me, but after a while, they got used to it and they got prepared to answer that question every night at the dinner table. Anyway, it's a real blessing to experience life at the dinner table, and I hope you get to do that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. You remind me of that Boys Town, Father Flanagan. He ain't heavy, he's my brother. You know, beautiful, what a beautiful story. And funny, wow. I also came from a large Catholic family, so I remember the dinner table. After a while, my parents moved all the younger kids over to a separate table because there were 14 of us and we didn't have a big enough table for everybody to sit.
Wow. Wow.
Wow,
Lovely.
that was absolutely delightful. Our next speaker is Adrienne Lowerly. Adrienne, great, good to see you. All right. Her story is entitled, She Wanted Storms. Sometimes, says Adrienne, we are drawn to the power of nature for something inside of us that we cannot explain. Please welcome Adrienne Lowery. She Wanted Storms.
Thank you. Well, the Russian poet Anna Akhmatova begins a poem of hers with these 2 lines. You will hear thunder and remember me and think she wanted storms. I stood at my open door, reveling in the wildness of the wind-whipped trees beyond. The power in the foothill town had gone out 2 hours before, and I'd hurriedly gathered candles and flashlights with whatever weak batteries they had in them to fight back the growing gloom of the early December afternoon without lights or power. As the day progressed, I had watched the growing power of the windstorm with Class 1 hurricane winds. More power lines arced in the distance and another neighborhood went dark. Trees whipped back and forth like rowdy cheerleaders at a home game win, and palm fronds dropped from the trees and blew down the street, lining it for a triumphant Palm Sunday-like entrance of 100-mile-an-hour winds that shot down the streets and rattled the windows and doors. I stood at my open door with a sense of awe and wonder that was only mildly tempered by fear of blowing debris heading my way. I knew I must look like an idiot with an amazed smile and a delighted grin on my face, and the glances from the police officers in the cruiser that coasted down the street suggested I might want to close my door now. I love storms, wild windstorms, pouring rain, especially thunder and lightning. I love counting the seconds between the flash and the rumble to gauge how close it was and which direction it was headed. I remember sleepovers with my girlfriends and youth group retreats where the girls had all huddled close and shrieked when lightning lit the sky or thunder rumbled. And I was the only one who would go and sit by the window and watch the light show outside, disappointed when it passed on and left. I was never sure why I found them so fascinating while others feared them. As a grade schooler, my middle-class suburban family lived in a house with a big yard and a friendly neighborhood where I went door to door every March to sell Girl Scout cookies. We 3 kids walked to our local school, hung out with friends on the weekend. Every summer, we packed up for family vacations to the mountains where we played board games and took long walks to other neighbors' cabins and swam in the community pool all day long, a source of many other stories I could tell. It was the only place where I would ever see my mother in her faded orange swimsuit do the most beautiful backward dives and jackknife and twist dives off the diving board at the deep end. But within the walls of our home, my mother and father struggled to keep the family together as my father's drinking became constant and daily. He kept a bottle of vodka in his desk drawer at work that he added to his coffee throughout the day, making the contents of his mug less coffee and more vodka by the late afternoon. And after a day of booze-infused accounting work, Dad would head to the Pigeon Loft, a bar next door to the photography studio where he worked as the accountant. This led to a nightly routine at home, which included a post-midnight interlude that grew to be regular. Around midnight, Mom would call Gary, the bartender at the Pigeon Loft, to see if Dad was there. Mom was at least assured that at that moment, Dad was safely on a bar stool instead of wrapped around a tree in a car crash. But it also meant that Dad had seen Gary turn around, look at him, and answer, "Yep, he's here," before hanging up the phone. Dad knew Mom was worried, and then he ordered at least 2 more drinks. It was around 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning that we would hear a familiar uneven shuffling footsteps coming up the walkway, the fumbling of the keys, and the not so quiet swearing as he tried to find the front doorknob in the dark. Mom was waiting, angry, hurt, frustrated, exasperated by these nightly pilgrimages to the Pigeon Loft and even later arrivals at home. While she was always relieved to know that he made it home, she also quietly wondered if he made it home in one, albeit well-lubricated piece, if that same could be said of any other drivers who might have encountered him on the road. We never knew. But as she flipped on the porch light and wrenched open the door, it was lights, camera, action, and the nightly verbal brawls began in earnest. Accusations and threats hurled between them, and while he never laid a hand on her, the verbal beatings were pretty brutal. Mom returned fire with equal vigor, but without Dad's farm-raised, sailor-enhanced expletive vocabulary. Thankfully, my childhood memories are absent the actual words that were said, just the volume and the vehemence with which they were delivered, much like a more hostile version of the teacher's voice in Charlie Brown's school classroom. But instead of asking about state capitals or multiplication tables, these voices accused and blamed one another for their joint misery. Once the arguments began, my sister and I crept out of our rooms, which were closest to the living room, and listened to the thunderous clashes between them, careful not to let our presence be known, as we might likely have been included in the chaos. Our brother wisely chose to stay in his room down the hall, or perhaps he was just a sounder sleeper. We never discussed these interludes among ourselves when the sun came up. Our nocturnal, vampiric observations were locked away during daylight for fear of turning ourselves into dust in the bright light of morning. Sometimes the violence spilled into daytime. If my father arrived home early in the evening and was assailed by the frustrations my mother had with my brother's latest behavior, eager to prove himself the man of the family, Dad would confront my brother, and it often became physical. He was the only one in our family who endured the physical version of what we all witnessed verbally after midnight. No wonder he stayed in his room every night. He'd already had a front row ticket to the show he never wanted to see in the first place. This kind of experience, the late night verbal brawls, the hurt, the accusations, the violence, it left its mark. But we tried to find ways to mitigate the heaviness. For the next year after my folks divorced and Dad moved out and got into Alcoholics Anonymous, we could likely hear on an occasion my mother laugh from another part of the house or garage and exclaim, "Eureka!" She had found yet one more of the bottles of whiskey or bourbon my dad had stashed around the house. They seemed to pop up like little boozy Easter eggs whenever we least expected it. All we could do was just laugh because, gallows humor. Well, while such late night storms left permanent marks on my spirit, I also know that such dark storms held their own gifts. Hard, difficult, sometimes dangerous gifts, but also empathetic and tenderhearted gifts that have allowed me to connect with my friends and students suffering and fears in many compassionate ways. And one of the gifts of insight I got that wild night of the windstorm was the realization that there are parts of me that are fearless, which can face down hurricane winds, real or otherwise. There was a reason that I could enjoy those thunderstorms. They held no terror for me because I knew that whatever storm raged outside my walls and windows, it paled in comparison to the storms I had experienced inside the walls of my home. And I began to understand that I enjoyed the loud rumbling thunder because with every lightning flash, something was vibrantly illuminated in bright contrast and offered a new and surprising way to see familiar things. So again, as the Russian poet Anna Akhmatova has said in her poem, you will hear thunder and remember me and think she wanted storms. The rim of the sky will be the color of hard crimson, and your heart, as it was then, will be on fire.
Beautiful, beautiful, Adrian. Wow.
Thank you.
What a delightful metaphor, going back and forth, starting with the storms and going into the personal part of the story and ending with uplifting words. Gorgeous. Nicely done.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let's come to our seventh speaker tonight, who is Katie Mangan. The title of her story, and I'm dying to hear this, is Colors from Pitch Black to Light. After a sudden loss of sight in her right eye, Katie experiences a colorful journey from pitch black to light. Okay, Katie, over to you.
Thank you. It was both sudden and scary. A swirl of pitch black fell from my right eye all the way down, completely obscuring my vision. I panicked. Using my left eye, I phoned the advice nurse, and I was told to seek medical help immediately. I was on vacation in Tahoe, 200 miles from my home in Santa Rosa. My husband, George, and I decided that we'd quickly pack up and make the mad dash back to Santa Rosa in time for an afternoon appointment with the eye surgeon. Now, George, normally a mild-mannered motorist, became a road warrior. He exceeded every speed limit, and on the freeway, he wove in and out of the traffic. And we arrived at the appointment in good time. It was over the course of the weekend that it was established I would need emergency laser surgery to repair 2 tears in my right retina and to strengthen the weaknesses in my left. The surgeon, Dr. Koo, explained how she would do this. You know, it's amazing what you can do with laser light and glue. And so on Monday afternoon, I went to the hospital in Santa Rosa and checked in at the admitting office, and then was taken up to the 2nd floor to the surgery ward. It reminded me of being at the airport, you know, checking in at the ticket counter and then finding your way to the departure lounge. When I arrived on the ward, there was an air of slight confusion. I mean, everybody was talking at once, it seemed. It was the time for the shifts to change. But finally, I was lying in bed and having countless eye drops administered. My nurse asked if I'd like a cocktail. Yes, please, I said. And I watched as she administered a bright orange fluid into my IV. I imagined it to be an exotic tangerine liqueur. And so now, lounging on cloud 9, I drifted in and out of sleep until I realized I was moving. My bed and I were being wheeled out of the ward, and we were going down a corridor. And then we stopped. Looking ahead, I could see the big round light of the operating theater. I imagined myself to be a jumbo jet, poised at the top of the runway, ready for takeoff. And then slowly, slowly, he began to move forward. Colors. Colors within my closed eyes would dominate my waking hours. Of course, at the beginning, it was that pitch black that occurred with the tear in my eye. And then that changed to deep browns and reds. And it was within these two colors that the face of Wolf appeared, gazing steadily at me, calm and confident, wise and strong. And after surgery, there was a violet blue light that appeared, sparkling with reassurance. And this was followed by turquoise, lakes and lakes of turquoise, oceans of aquamarines and blues. But these cool and calming colors were replaced with vibrant oranges and reds, reminiscent of an African sunset sky. And I looked at the thin black line of the horizon, hoping to see a giraffe gracefully gliding by, but I never did. A week after surgery, I had a checkup. I was excited as a kindergartner when, with my right eye, I recognized the letter E. And I fairly shouted out all those letters, and it got smaller and smaller and smaller. It will be a full 5 weeks for recovery. I have 2 more to go. The days have been spent with patience, with sitting quietly, with going deep within. Of feeling gratitude to the surgeon, Dr. Koo, and the Kaiser staff. Deep gratitude to George, who became road warrior, and then my constant companion, and as he called himself, my seeing eye dog. And we joked that he had a sign on his chest which read, "Working dog, please, don't feed or pet." And lastly, deepest gratitude to the colors for this most magical and mysterious journey from pitch black to light and finally to sight. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Katie. Oh, it gives luscious color descriptions, just absolutely gorgeous. Thank you so much, and what a gripping story. What a brave person you were. You must have been holding on to the dashboard to survive during that.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. We come to our last storyteller of the night. Pamela Samuels Young. I do keep delighting her first 2 names. Pamela Samuels Young is telling a story entitled No Apology.
Sorry, Tina, I'm having trouble getting her on. Hold on a second.
Okay. Let's see if we can.
Let me just,
There
we
she
go.
is. Yeah.
And okay, gotta take, there. Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay. So Pamela Samuels Young is telling a story entitled No Apology Necessary. It's about a daughter's reflections on race through the eyes of her father. Please welcome Pamela Samuels Young.
Thank you. Why'd you park over there? The old white man barked at me. Didn't you see that sign? It was a warm Saturday afternoon in March, and I had just come from my cousin's wedding at the lovely Chapel of the Roses in Pasadena. I was in a great mood. The sun was shining and love was in the air. Who wouldn't feel wonderful after witnessing two people profess to the world that they were going to love each other forever? But now this old guy was messing with my mellow mood. I glanced around the church parking lot looking for the sign he was talking about, and then I saw it. It said church parking only. Okay, now I'm confused because I had done exactly what the sign said. I just came from that church over there, I told the guy, making my tone just as snotty toward him as his was toward me. And the sign says church parking, so I don't understand what the problem is. This ain't the lot for that church, the man fired back. This is the lot for the church over there. You're trespassing. Trespassing? Well, how was I supposed to know that? You need to make your sign more clear. For the record, I was raised to respect my elders. I was in my late 20s at the time, and judging from this guy's stooped posture, his graying hair, and his leathery skin, I suspected he was somewhere in his 80s. Well, I didn't have time for this nonsense. I snatched open the door of my candy apple red two-seater Pontiac Fiero, a car that was of a particular point of pride for me for two reasons. One, my little Fiero was the first car I'd ever bought all by myself. And two, my little Fiero was a man magnet. I was also feeling pretty good that day for another reason. I had just been accepted into law school for the upcoming fall semester at UC Berkeley. I was making a pre-midlife career change, and I was pretty excited about what the future held for me. So this trespassing nonsense, I didn't have time for it. The guy was lucky that I didn't already have my law degree. I could imagine myself standing before the jury, pointing out all the ambiguities in the sign and demanding emotional distress damages for this drama. So I climbed into the front seat of my car, expecting the guy was just going to walk away. But he didn't. He just stood there glaring down at me with such venom that I almost felt like I could feel the heat from his wobbly red cheeks. And as his eyes burrowed into mine, my own fury began to spike. And my first thought was that this guy was having a flashback to an earlier era where Black people, young or old, instantly bowed and scraped in his presence. But this was 1987 Pasadena, California, not 1957 Birmingham, Alabama. And I wasn't about to let him take me back to the Jim Crow South. Started up the car, backed out of the stall, and as I was about to move forward, the guy did something I didn't expect. He jumped in front of my car. What the hell? Before I could make a decision about what to do next, I could see my father, who was also at the wedding, leaving the church, running over. What's going on over here, he said. The man wasted no time in telling my father that I had committed the sin of trespass. She needs to apologize, he told my father. I rolled down the window and stuck my head out. Apologize? I'm not apologizing. That sign wasn't clear. I didn't do anything wrong. If you apologize, I'll call the police. Go ahead, call the police. I'll wait right here for them. When I looked up at my dad, there was like this big smirk on his face, as if he was stifling a laugh. And he finally said, "Sir, she didn't know she wasn't supposed to park here. She's sorry." "I'm not sorry," I yelled up at the man. I don't think I did anything wrong." "You better apologize," the man said. "I'll call the police." "I don't care, call the police. I'll go to jail first because I'm not apologizing." My father steps in again. "Sir, how about this? How about if I apologize for her? She didn't mean any harm. She didn't know she was supposed to park here." The man stood there, glaring at me for a few more intense seconds, then finally shuffled away. And as soon as he did, my father launched into a full-fledged crack-up mode. And that only angered me more because I didn't understand what was so funny. So I revved up the engine and sped off. Flash forward about a week later, I visit my parents' house, and when I step into the living room, I hear my father in the den talking to one of his buddies. He's recounting my parking lot incident. Man, you should have seen her. She wasn't scared of that old white guy at all. She refused to apologize. And as I stood there listening as he told this story with a sense of glee, I was a little confused because I didn't get why it was at all significant to him. I went ahead and visited with my mother and didn't even discuss the incident with him. A week or so later, I'm visiting my parents again. My father is telling the same story to another friend. She told that white man she would go to jail first. She refused to apologize, a little stubborn little thing. But he said it with such a sense of pride. And it was just so baffling to me. And as much as my dad likes to talk, I know he told the same story at the barbershop, at the liquor store, probably to strangers in line at the grocery store. It was years later, probably several years later, before the significance of that incident for my father registered with me, before I understood it. It happened while I was attending a conference, and a speaker spoke about the Great Migration. Between 1950 and 1970, more than 5 million African Americans left the rural South to escape oppressive racial discrimination that impacted every aspect of their lives. They left Atlanta and Birmingham and moved to Chicago and Detroit. They left Mobile and Jackson and moved to New York and Los Angeles. The new cities weren't free of discrimination, but it provided them way more opportunities than they had in the land of their birth. And until hearing that speaker, I'd never thought about the Great Migration as it related to my own parents. My mother was 17 when she left Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. My father was 18 when he left Shreveport, Louisiana. They both landed in Los Angeles in the early 1950s. They both came via an Amtrak train. And once they were here, they put the indignities of the Jim Crow South behind them. They never spoke to us about it, never shared an incident that happened to them. Not even when we watched footage on TV of police officers in Birmingham, Alabama, turning water hoses and sicking dogs on well-dressed Black people simply because they wanted the right to vote. My parents didn't say a word. I remember seeing that footage of those college protesters in Greensboro, North Carolina at the Woolworth counter who were snatched off the counter and slammed to the ground because of the simple sin of ordering a soda at a whites only lunch counter. I watched those videos with my parents and they never said anything. And that iconic image of young Ruby Bridges, that 6-year-old, that kindergartner who had to be escorted to kindergarten with US Marshals on both sides as angry throngs of white people, kids and adults, hurled racial slurs at her. She was 6 years old. Those incidents that my parents lived through rendered them mute. For me, it was televised history. For them, it was real life pain. I can remember asking my dad as a kid when I saw those documentaries with the whites only and the colored only signs over the drinking fountains and restrooms. Hey, Daddy, did you have signs like that when you were growing up? Sure did. That was it. Never expanded, never spoke more about it. Never said how that indignity made him feel. Only now at the age of 90 has he in recent years shared more. Like the time his sharecropper father begged, and he used the word begged, the white plantation owner to allow him to go to school, a request that was denied because his 8-year-old hands were needed to pick cotton. Or how he had to step off a sidewalk if a white person was approaching, or the rage he felt over the death of Emmett Till. It's a shame what they did to that boy, was all he said. I understand now why my father reveled in my fearlessness that day in March. A fearlessness he could not have shown as a young man. A fearlessness he couldn't have shown at the age of 55, which was how old he was at the time of that incident. Had my father mouthed off the way I had to that old white guy, results could have been very different, maybe even deadly, even in 1987 Pasadena. On the grounds of that church parking lot on that day, past and present collided to create one moment with two very distinct perspectives. For me, it was frustration. For my dad, it was satisfaction, or maybe even triumph. Triumph that his offspring, a girl no less, would have the gall to tell a white man to go shove it. I still say, I didn't know that old guy, an apology. And in light of everything he's endured, neither did my dad. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Pamela. Oh, that was just absolutely gorgeous. Thank you so much for giving us the history as well as the personal story. I do appreciate that. All right, I'm going to ask all of our storytellers to become spotlighted. Well, that means Andrew's going to spotlight you all, so just stay put there. And would all the rest of you like to unmute and give them a rousing round of applause?
Great job. Good job. Thank you so much. Wonderful, wonderful.
Yourself, Andrew.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you.
That's super.
Beautiful, wonderful stories.
All of you were wonderful.
What a group. Somebody get it. Hang on a second. I need a screenshot. Everybody smile. Ready?
Yeah.
There. Gotcha. We
Good.
only have a few seconds left in the program, but I do want to at least speak briefly with each one of our storytellers. Ashton, can you tell us what storytelling group you're representing tonight? I think you're freezing on us, Ashton. There, you came back again for a second.
Story Masters of Los Angeles. That's who I'm representing. Thank you. And I see some of you here.
Los Angeles in the house. And Ashton is an author and performer of storytelling. She's got several upcoming gigs. If you haven't yet had a chance to capture it, please save the program for tonight because it has information on how to reach the storytellers. And for those of you who can't access the program for any reason, would all the storytellers please, if you want to be contacted, put your email address into chat. Thank you. How about you, Mindy? Okay, Mindy from San Diego. What group are you representing tonight?
Storytellers of San Diego. We're a nonprofit. Yeah.
Hey, Mindy.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Mindy.
And
Mindy.
Storytellers of San Diego has some traction tonight. Thank you. And this was such a beautiful program. I am deeply touched and honored to be among such brilliant tellers. And my most coming up in this event is that I'm leaving for Europe September 1st to retrace some of my old steps, take some new steps, bring home some new stories. And then we, of course, take the Telebration production plunge as we do. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mindy.
Thank you all.
Hey, Mindy.
Marion, what group are you representing tonight?
The Delta Word Weavers. So I've led the Delta Word Weavers for 35 years.
30 years. Wow.
Our excitement is, let's see, September 11th, we're co-sponsoring with STAT. Do you have the right? So it's on my regular time, second Sunday, 2:00 of the month. So that's September 11th. We have two lawyers from California Lawyers for the Arts attending, and then two members are going to give testimony about struggling with copyrights. And then we're going to have questions and asked by you. So we want you to come to ask all these questions. You'll be prompted by the presentations of the lawyers. So that's the biggest thing coming up. Then we have regular swap on October 9th, but then November 13th is Celebration.
You're going to be busy, Marion. Would you please put the date of your Do You Have the Right workshop into chat along with your email address so people can email you for more information?
I just now did that. It's
wonderful. Terrific. Okay, our master chef, Rupa Moha.
Hi everyone, I'm representing the Contra Costa Tail Spinners, and our fearless leader Liz is here. And our next meeting is next Thursday the 26th at 7 p.m. Do come and check us out.
Wonderful. And then you're planning a big trip soon, aren't you, Rupa?
Yes, I have to go back to India. It's been over 2 years, so I have to go there, and hopefully I'll come back with some new recipes.
And new stories.
Like an Indian style paella.
Ah, yes.
Whoa.
And Andrew, which group are
Hi,
you
everybody.
representing tonight?
Such a pleasure to tell stories with you all tonight. I just really enjoyed it.
Great.
I'm with the Sacramento Storytellers Guild, and we have our program is going to be next Saturday. And here is my website, and then my actual private email address is below as well. You can go to the website to get the link, the Zoom link for the program. It's all free, and we do both. We do a hybrid program. So we do in-person and hybrid. So we actually have members from India who listen in on us sometimes, all the way from across the world. So
With the
anyway.
time difference, that must be fun.
Yeah. Oh, and one more thing I wanted to bring to your attention. We are planning the first ever Sacramento Valley Storytellers Festival. That's going to be in May of 2023. So more information will come out about that later.
Cool. I think the Bay Area Storytelling Festival is also thinking about May, so make
Yeah,
sure.
we already coordinated the dates.
Good, okay,
Good.
super, great to know that the festivals are starting up again.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see, Adrienne, you're up next. What group are you representing tonight?
I am part of the Inland Valley Storytelling Guild that meets in Claremont, California. And you can find us at inlandvalleystorytellers.org. I'm, as far as storytelling for myself, as my little bio said, I'm doing a lot more with like editing and helping other people learn how to tell story. I'm actually doing a 2-part grant writing workshop in September to help people learn to tell the stories of their nonprofits so that they can get money. And our celebration, we're doing kind of a twofold celebration. We're actually going to be live again on the 19th of November at the Folk Music Center in Claremont. It's a fabulous stage. If you get down here, please come visit. There's just instruments from around the world all over the walls. It's just, and they like vibrate with story. It's just amazing. And then we're going to do our joint celebration with a Northern California group. I don't know that I was told which one. I apologize. On November 20th, and that'll be via Zoom. So I will definitely be one of the tellers at the live concert. I'm not sure if there'll be other people who fill the slots for that Saturday one, but I think I'll be at the live one. That's the one I kind of want to do this year. So
What's the date for the live one again?
the live one is the 19th of November. And so that's a Saturday. So that's the usual celebration Saturday, that third Saturday of November. And I think it starts at 7 at the Folk Music Center in Claremont. It is a treat to behold just to walk in that place. So
I've been there. It's terrific.
yeah,
In fact, I go in there with absolutely no intention of doing anything, but just standing there with my mouth hanging open, looking around.
Oh yeah, I had the great privilege of the way they had it arranged one time. The stage is in kind of a corner where the walls are lined with all these stringed instruments, and during the telling, literally everything was just vibrating and singing from the walls behind. It was just magical.
That was tremendous.
Fabulous. And Katie, we are so happy to have you here, seeing with both eyes tonight. What storytelling group are you representing?
I'm representing the Do Tell Story Swap of Santa Rosa. And I'm so delighted to be here. It's just such an honor. So thank you very much. And we meet the second Tuesday of every month. So please come and join us. We'd love to have you. Thank you.
Delightful. Thank you so much. Pamela, what group are you representing tonight?
I'm representing Tell Me a Story of Los Angeles. I'm also an author. I write legal thrillers. I'm a lawyer as well. And you can read excerpts of my book at PamelaSamuelsYoung.com. And you can even download my first book for free on Barnes & Noble and Amazon, of course. So please, if you love a good story, if you love a good mystery, check me out under the name Pamela Samuels Young.
And I bought a couple of Pamela's books one time when I had an opportunity to, and one of them I was still reading at 3 o'clock in the morning until my husband finally got up and moved over into the other room because he couldn't sleep. I mean, they are that good. They are solidly, beautifully crafted. So thank you all again so very, very much. This has been a terrific show. Thank you for letting me be your MC tonight. And
Thanks for
thank
your
you,
organization, team.
wonderful audience, for being so good, so quiet, so appreciative. It's a pleasure having you aboard. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tina and
Thanks.
Jags and Andy for
Wanna
the
say anything
tech
to
support,
everybody?
and the cheerleading and the bravado.
Yeah.
Actually, that does.
Jax was real helpful. I don't usually tell because I'm always the tech support. And it kind of was clear tonight because my mind gets carried away when I'm doing the tech stuff. If I'm not don't have to focus on my story or whatever, thinking about how it went, I can really do, coordinate well. But Shags helped me out quite a bit tonight.
That's why it was Veni Vidi Velcro. I came, I saw, I stuck around.
Mhm.
Yep.
Thanks, thank you so much.
Thank
Nice
you
things
again.
in the chat. You want to tell everybody when and where the video will be available?
Yeah, we got to close the meeting and it takes Zoom a little while. And then I've got dinner to heat up.
No.
Chicken.